How quickly can Florida State fix this offensive mess?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk Seminoles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach, the brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all in caps, inside the game in the store to receive a free boost to your program. Start your coaching legacy today. Let's get right into it. Florida State's offense stinks right now. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. How do you fix it and do so quickly? Today's show will adapt very, very straightforward based on the quarterback, the offensive line, the receivers, and then a little extra that I have at the end. I just think that they're going to have to come up with some creative ways to score. We'll get into that at the very end of the show, but that's a little bonus. But first, let's start with DJU. How do you fix the offense through the lens of DJU? And then we'll go down the line, position by position. Number one, you have to play to a player's strengths. DJU is a quality quarterback with a humongous arm, but he is not mobile. They did not do a good job of adapting to him as an offensive line. I can tell you that. Forget the coaching staff and the play calling for a second. They cannot put him in situations where they're just dinking and dunking on first down. If he throws a check down because everybody's covered, that's fine. But here's a stat for you. 9 out of 13 on first down passing. Solid percentage. However, when you throw for 76 yards in 13 attempts, that equates to just under 6 yards per pass. Abysmal. First down passing has risks. Incompletions lead to 2nd and 10s. There are also sacks. There are also potential for penalties. For your gain to be less than 6 yards per play, everybody is culpable. Mike Norvell, all the way to DJ, everybody in between, receivers, O-line, tight. This is everything. But part of being a quarterback is you're in the big box discussion. How do we fix it? He was pretty accurate with some of those throws. He missed a few too. He was behind some guys, a little weight on the throw that he threw to Cam Davis. He had some inaccuracy points during the game. That'll get better as timing moves forward with throwing more and more during games. He'll have his moments. And even that, by the way, the fourth quarter drive, the two passes on 4th down were tremendous. And we can do it. Those were down the field rockets. Hey, you'll take those every time. But they got to help him, especially on first down. And here are a couple ideas. Number one, beyond running the ball better, which, by the way, they averaged 3.2 yards per carry. I know sacks go against that, but they didn't get sacked much. They have to block better when they run the ball, so the passing is set up. They've got to find a way to do better with the tight end. I don't care if it's Jack West. I don't care if it's Morlock. I don't care if it's Landon Thomas. Got to do better. You can't have Ja'Kai Douglas as your primary. You're not going anywhere with Ja'Kai as your primary. He's a 5'9" guy who's athletic as all get out, but he's just not a big enough guy, and the catch radius is not there. Tight ends were not used, and when I talk about them, let me be clear. They must catch passes beyond 5 yards too, down the seam, etc. If they are not, Florida State's going to struggle. Remember the game against Pittsburgh last year? That's the game Ja'Kai had a really good game, 115 yards. Well, Jaheim Bell also had some moments like that in that game as well, and others. You find ways to adapt to your personnel. Florida State, again, across the board, did not do a good job against Georgia Tech in that regard. Hats off to the Yellow Jackets for playing solid defense, but they are not the 85 Bears. They've got, Romello Height, et cetera, coming after you. I get it. Here's another point. To help the tight ends, the receivers, running backs, everybody, DJ included, DJ is not necessarily quote-unquote mobile by any stretch. And shout out to you for all the people on my YouTube channel that said, hey, I don't think he's going to work because he's not a mobile guy, and that's what Norvell does. You're 1 for 1 there. I still think we need more time, but we'll see. But to help him, you still got to move the pocket. And what that means is he's not sprinting and running to get outside and most likely running. Just change it up where his release point is. It only has to be a few more of these a game. Make it more difficult for teams to look into the backfield and project where DJ is going to be. When you know the quarterback is going to be about the same spot over and over, it really helps the defensive ends in particular to tee off. It also makes it more difficult for the offensive tackles, whether it's Robert Scott, I don't care which guy it's in the game. It doesn't matter. Byers, Darius Washington, it doesn't matter. You want to make them think, talking about the defensive players coming after the QB, as well as the secondary. What are they going to do? You want them to hesitate. A slight hesitation is the difference between an incomplete pass being batted down or a sack being turned into a touchdown pass. It's a game of inches. That's why football is so fascinating. It is so close on so many plays. Florida State has to help itself there. Move the pocket. You could throw it to Morlock. You could throw it. Again, a few of the times they did it. I'm okay with that. I just think they need to do it a little bit more with a little more creativity, and that leads to this. I know this is unfortunate, and what I'm suggesting is difficult at the college level because they don't have as much time to prepare. There are restraints on practice time. They got to go with some more shifts and more motions pre-snap than they already do. That sucks. I don't like saying that, but they have to make the other team think even more than what I'm talking about with a little bit of rollouts. Georgia Tech did it to Florida State and definitely caused issues in the front seven, especially at linebacker. I'll talk about defense later today or tomorrow in a pod, but we'll get there. Today is just 100% offense. Knowles, if you move the pocket, DJ gets outside a little bit, that's great. If you do that after they've shifted a couple times, you may even get a guy that's got so much leverage, it's almost like this is a freebie. That's what you're looking for. You want a tight end or a receiver or running back going back and forth, and you get the DB behind it. This is not a hard thing. They're going to have to do some of that because right now they're not explosive enough down the field. And that, before anybody says anything, and I'm sure some of you are ready to comment already on the YouTube channel, I get it, but they're going to have to find ways to create more explosive plays to the receivers. And unfortunately, I don't have the all 22 copy to watch the film and watch the routes in completion from start to finish because the TV just doesn't show the routes down the field. You need to literally see 100% of all receiver routes on all plays to make a definite answer. And I know fans won't do that, but that's how coaches do it. I'll go with the guys that make millions of dollars. They have that copy. I do not. Being stated as such, there still can't be a point where you don't blame the receiver some. I mean, they were pedestrian in numbers. So some of the blame is on them. They flat have to be better in their routes. They flat out have to be better at the catch point. They flat out have to be better in giving DJ confidence that before the snap even happens, there's going to be a chance for a big play. I'm going to be open kind of thing. You always hear receivers talk about I'm always open. Well, based on how the game went yesterday, the receivers were like flies on fly paper. They got stuck. This is Georgia Tech. This is not Clemson. This is the Yellow Jackets, not the Fighting Irish. This is not the game down at Hard Rock Stadium against the Canes. Like, those teams are going to have better players than Georgia Tech's defense. I guarantee you. If you think Georgia Tech's defense gave Florida State's receivers problems, what are those three teams going to do? Better routes, better at the catch point, more separation. I mean, that's this technique stuff. I get it. But I will add one other point. So to make it a little easier for DJ, here's the deal, man. He's got to be able to throw it up to some. I don't know which guy he has the most confidence in. He's going to have to throw some 50-50 balls this year that he may not have wanted to throw when he was at Clemson or Oregon State. I don't know. I don't know the guy. But this team is not the same as the one last year. Had Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson out wide. They don't have Jaheim either. All three of those guys would have been their number one this year. They don't have that guy until otherwise proven. Benson's okay. Jakai's a pretty good player, but he's going to have to just accept this is not a elite group of receivers. That's the way it is. So I would love to eat crow on that and see games 2, 3, and 4 show, I don't know, maybe it's Deuce-Span or somebody steps up. I don't care who it is. Somebody's going to have to, in some capacity at least, but there's going to have to be more 50-50 balls. And they're going to have to throw it down the field because you're not going to 5-yard teams to death with the way the offensive line's playing. And that's what we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Seminoles. The offensive line, man, it's got a long way to go. We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Seminoles. Hey, Locked On Florida State fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up about something more positive, and that is the brand new mobile game that I think you're going to like just as much as I do. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. This amazing game simulation allows you to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Imagine being the head coach of the Noles. Everything from recruiting, hiring staff, overseeing training camps, and handling scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. And here's what everybody should love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays. That's really cool. Your strategy will not only determine the success of the game, but how your football season and your program takes shape. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, no ads, 100% playable offline. Play as you go. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Seminoles fans. Use the promo code Locked On College Football, all caps, in the game store to receive a free boost for your program. Make sure you take advantage of this perk. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Download it today. Was the offensive line the worst offensive unit? It is certainly a question to be asked. If you talk about the second quarter, I will argue to the ends of the earth that it definitely was. Some of the lack of performance in the second quarter by Florida State's offensive line is really, 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 really discouraging. I'm not sure why it was so bad, but it was. And I'm unfortunately to the point where I don't really know what to say about it other than like technique, etc. And I'll get to a key point in addition. But considering the following note, this is an incredible stat. According to one of the announcers, and I'm glad they said it because I didn't count it up, Florida State had 210 starts among their players coming into the game up front. 210. That's an insane amount of experience. For them to be whiffing in some basic pass protection situations, you are what you are, because this is one of the most veteran groups in all of college football, regardless of position group, and they failed. That's true. You got to get the baseline out there, and I hate being negative, but they failed. There were just too many mental errors. They'd have one or two plays that looked great. Then the next play, a guy's just going buck free, or an offensive lineman's lunging like a junior in high school, trying to get a kill shot. There's so many technical points I could go into and just do a show on. I'm not an O-line coach, but some of this was blatant. One of my buddies is an O-line guy down in Florida that would have just lost his lunch over watching this and going through it with me. So I'm not even going to call him because I know what he's going to say. Like some of the plays in particular, Fires lunging at a play, getting way off like he was on roller skates. There were plays in the middle of the line. You got Mo in there and some of the guys. There had to have been miscommunications. This is a problem. So here are a few. This is not all, but these are a few of the things that I came up with. And you can take it however you like. But if they're going to get better as an offense, a few of these need to happen. You at least have to consider mixing up the right tackle spot or moving something around. I don't have the answer. But in passing situations, the right tackle spot is a sieve right now. That's my opinion. Prove me wrong. They looked terrible against Georgia Tech in that second quarter. Not bad. Terrible. You have to figure that out. Second one. And I don't know what their theory is on this because they didn't have this problem to this level last year. Had some issues, but do you need to leave a running back and or tight end in the backfield more often? Now, let me be very clear on this, as I've stated numerous times on Locked On Seminoles. College football coaches, high school coaches, pro coaches, they have one thing in common. The word change to them is like a four-letter word. They hate it with every fiber of their existence as a general rule. But when you're getting your butt kicked up front, you at least have to consider it. That's my thought process. Love to hear your thoughts on it here on Locked On Seminoles on the YouTube channel. Fire away. I might even do a live show later this week to kind of go over some things depending on what everybody comments during this show. And I'm going to do one on defense later as well, because if you don't change the lineup or you don't change something, what are you going to do? But the tight end is the first thing. I hate doing that, but if they continue, like the first quarter against BC, if it's obvious they have a player that's given, I don't care which guy it is, they have a player that's really teeing off, they're moving him around, or if it's a collection, which is the worst, different guys getting through, Florida State has to consider just going 6-man at minimum protection, and that sucks, but you can't have your quarterback getting teed off on. Doesn't work. I don't care who it is. Even Jordan Travis is going to get sacked the way that happened in the second quarter. Now, it did get better in the second half, way better. But that is film that is now out, too. These defensive coaches from every school are going to try to use that, to get better at finding that one play where you change the game with a strip sack fumble or something. It's going to come. So you better figure that out pretty quick. If they don't consider it, that's a mistake by the staff. You can't just go 5-man protection with how they were doing it for much of the game. Now, I've mentioned with DJ in the first section of the show, throwing on first down. There are a few things with this just to add on to help the O-line. It works both directions. Quarterback helps O-line and vice versa. Hike, catch the ball off the shotgun snap, turn, throw slant. Hike, throw some slip screens. Hike, throw fade ball, jump ball. That's something I talked about. You're not getting a sack on a one-step read. You're not. The only way that happens is if the quarterback just freezes and doesn't throw it for some reason. And that's on him, not the guys up front. I mean, the O-line's not at any length going to be worried about it because they should. If they're supposed to get down the field on a screen, he doesn't throw it, or there's kind of miscommunication, is what it is. They have to change up the first down passes. Again, as I mentioned with the DJ section, they're going to have to do it. And they're also going to have to probably just get better up front, man, with that. Because some of those first down plays, again, as I mentioned, they average less than 6 yards. That's a problem. But here's the biggest one. This might be the one that I'm most concerned about Florida State's team, not just the offense overall. And I'm going to delve into this for about 2 minutes. I mentioned this a while back on the show that because teams that have aspirations to go into playoffs, they're in a tough spot. Why? We've got a good team. You're going to go to the playoff, Brian. What are you talking about? Well, here's why. If you play more games, there's going to be more injuries. It's just math. So to mitigate that, there are going to be some teams, maybe it's Florida State, I certainly don't know, they don't open all the practices, they're going to hit less. Let me be very clear about this. Based on watching Georgia Tech as compared to Florida State, especially in the trenches and how well the team's tackled, which team do you think hit more prior to the game itself, especially the week of? Georgia Tech or Florida State? Obviously, that is a redundant and ridiculous question in some senses, but I am trying to pour salt in the wound. I think Florida State's staff failed here, or the players just got really soft. Maybe both. They got to hit more in practice, and that includes full-on pass rush drills. Well, you don't hit the quarterback, but it is just going at it because they didn't look physical enough in that. The run game, I know that gets really dicey, going full on, doing like 9-on-7 drill and stuff, but they're going to have to do something. Florida State's O-line was not physical enough in the run game, which also helps set up play action, and DJ's better at. And they were not physical enough at some points, not all, but at some points when they were pass protected. That first initial shot, one of the ways you can jump set somebody, there are different things you can do, but you still eventually want to get a hand to the middle of the sternum or the chest area. Florida State didn't exactly do that. They have to hit more in practice and risk injury. Right now, let's be honest. The way they played yesterday, they're not exactly a college football playoff team anyway. That's the conservative answer. Like it or not, they're not much of anything right now offensively. Defensively, they got some problems too, but hitting will actually help the D-line and the linebackers. They got to hit more in practice. And when I say that, just to denote, tackle to the ground. There's going to be injuries with it. There are going to be more guys beat up. If you're only going to score 21 points and your defense is going to give up 190 yards rushing, whatever plan you used wasn't working in fall camp, and or maybe it was just this week, maybe they backed off too early. I don't know. Again, we don't have access. Tackle to the ground. It'll especially help the O-line in being aggressive in the run game, which open up things for DJ. And then I'll talk again. I'm going to do a show on the defense later. We'll talk about that, but they got to have that kind of mentality where it's more full go, because everything with chemistry, how they block, how they tackle, how they take on pass routes, everything from a mentality standpoint, Florida State's got to be more physical. There's no doubt about it. Next up, we're going to talk about the receivers. And man, are they taking some heat on online? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Seminoles. 5 Hour Energy is the brand that working people like you have trusted for over 20 years. Give them a shot with their alert, energized feeling that they give you throughout a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience store, drugstore, and grocery store nationwide. Stock up on energy-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious 5 Hour Energy shots. If you go to find this, all you got to do is go into 5hourenergy.com. Now, to be clear, there's the number 5, then hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, hourenergy.com. And you can use code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your first order. This offer is only valid through the 30th and one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. College football is back, and it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, whatever you want to check in on, Locked On College Football has you covered with experts with all across the Locked On College Football Network to come on and discuss it. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their conference? Everything you need to know on Locked On College Football. Make sure you check it out. Be a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about the receivers. I'm not going to go as deep into this, but the receivers, they got to be culpable as well. I know this is the hardest one, and it's why I didn't lead with it or do it earlier in the show, because you don't get to see everything on a TV copy. I've said that a couple of times. It's very frustrating to me, but the numbers still stink. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's just read off a couple of these numbers. Let me see if I can find the stats here real quick. But if you're talking about all the different stuff that Florida State did offensively and how it worked, here are just the raw numbers for the wide receivers. Again, you can take this any way you want. Ja'Kai, he had 4 receptions, tied with Benson for the most on the team, 55 yards, which did lead. He had a 20-yarder. He was targeted 6 times, so 4 out of 6. Malik Benson targeted 6 times, connected 4 out of 6, 39 yards, long of 19. Rodell Williams, running back. It's not a good sign when your running back is 3rd in receiving yards and also 2nd in receptions, 3 for 31, long of 15. Tofili, 3 for 25, had a 21-yarder. The guy that surprised me they didn't get the ball to more is Jalen Brown. You can make an argument that's the biggest concern. He can fly, 2 catches for 11 yards, long of 10. Portier had 1 catch for 15 yards. It was a key play, but still they need more. Morlock, 1 catch for 12 yards, only targeted 3 times. Lucas targeted once, and Cam Davis on that unfortunate throw out to the flat was targeted just once. Lucas caught 1 pass for 5 yards. The receivers just weren't involved enough. And you can, if you want to take shots, I don't have a way again to really combat it. I've answered a ton of questions on the YouTube channel about this big diatribe. People complaining, and of course, the Miami fans and different fans from different fan bases coming in to make fun of Florida State's loss to Georgia Tech. But there is something here to say. If they don't get something going, especially down the field, you're going to have to point to them even more, even without the film that you can't see unless you're like at the game or have all 22 film, which is vertical, because it's not just O-line and DJ. They have to be making some errors. And I'm guessing most of this just technical stuff in conjunction with just a bunch of newness. Malik Benson's a first-year player in the program. I know he's an experienced guy, played at JUCO, then at Bama, but it's his first year with the Noles. Ja'Kai Douglas has played some, so they used him. That's good. Hakeem was out. That's unfortunate. I'm disappointed with the fifth-year guys that have been around the program. I mean, they didn't get it done. other than Ja'Kai. Ja'Kai played pretty good, but where are the other guys? Kentron had a catch. Where's Deuce Span? There's nothing else there. That's a concern. I know my buddy Bud Elliott talked about how he didn't have high expectations. Apparently, rightfully so, for the wide receivers. And like I listened to the Nolecast the other day, and he was talking about, he's like, we took a bunch of flack before the season with our predictions about the wide receiver spot. And he might be just 100% on the mark. Bud's pretty knowledgeable about football and Florida State in particular. I'm not going to completely throw him under the bus. Again, I can't see everything, but the experienced guys in particular, I'm pretty down on. So here are a couple points that I want to add. You've got to have more separation in deep shots. And when I say the deep shots, they're just going to have to beat guys at the line. If they're playing press, you got to beat them. If they're playing off, you got to do a better job with your deception. This is all technique stuff. We just talked about in the O-line being more physical as a team, etc. That's part of it too. At the line, you got to be more physical. They might run some more stack formations, maybe more bunch. That's possible. You'll create separation near the line of scrimmage and possibly get a big play out of it. Not out of the question. It's not like Florida State speed is going to be different. They've still got a ton of that. They got guys that can fly. No question. But if you're not open, it doesn't matter. You've got to create separation. It's like you're not fast the way they're running these routes. Technique can't be that good right now. There's just no way. I'm not buying it. Way too much experience. Way too much speed. They got big guys too, like Span, Portier. It'll be great when Hakeem's back too, but too much talent overall for those pedestrian numbers that I just gave off and what I'm talking about. Not one time did I feel like there was a moment in the game where Georgia Tech's defense, quote unquote, feared what Florida State's receivers were going to do. Technique, technique, technique. I know that's a boring answer, but they're going to run some different routes. They'll probably mix up a few formations, but I still think this is the most basic of the three conversations today. They're going to have to do that. Lastly, before I get out of here, I mentioned something a little different, a little special. When I was growing up in the Bowden era, especially when they had some struggles, they would have a fake punt. The punt Ruski, the famous play at Clemson, they needed something from a spark perspective. You can do that offensively too. I don't know if it's a throwback to DJ, who nobody would expect, like he hands off, running back goes to the right, DJ rolls around. Something like that is possible, but they need a spark. Flea flicker, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a more generic play than some other people think, but they're going to have to spark the offense a little more this year, be a little more creative. Maybe even, in some people's opinions, take an extra chance. I'm okay with that. If you really get to the point, let's say 3-4 games into this, and you're struggling still, you really got to do it. This is only going into BC, and they're fortunate. They get an extra couple of days to prepare. A week from today, that game will take place at Inside Doak at nighttime. So that's good, but they have to at least consider trying some different things, because right now they're just not good enough to consistently sustain drives as an offense. Can they quickly fix this? Yes, in increments. That's how I'm going to answer the original question. They don't have the personnel right now, in my opinion, and you can't change it mid-season. This isn't like the NFL where you get somebody on waivers and hope it works. They got to do what they got to do to make it happen with the players there. And right now, I'm sure the confidence is waning. Just like that was basically the name of my last pod. Check that out, because I don't hold back on that podcast either. But they're going to have to figure it out with some play calling differences, more physical, using DJ to quite honestly be a lot different. Because if they're not, instead of talking about the college football playoff, the offense alone, and again, I'm going to do a pod on the defense too, but the offense alone will keep you out of that conversation, because they won't even come close to making the ACC title game based on how they played against Georgia Tech. The offense was offensive. So they got a lot of things to work on. I think incrementally they'll get better, but here's my first goal, and I'll talk about this when we get going through the show this week. It'll probably see something I say about 50 times. At minimum, offensively, they need to score 30 points against Boston College. At minimum. Until they get to that point, this offense is not good enough to even be average. Not even good enough to be average. So with that, thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen of the day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, subscribe, rate, and review. And once again, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Locked On ACC is another great show. They did a segment with me after the Florida State game. There's a lot of different opinions here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check it out. Thank you once again, and I'll be back later today to talk some defense and what they need to improve as well.